Hey, thanks for checking out Creavite tutorials once again. My name is Sar, and today we're gonna talk about depth of field. Now let's say you took this great photo. It has a lot of potential. It has great colors, you got objects in the foreground, and also a lot of things are going in the background as well. But there is no depth of field. Nothing is out of focus. Now in Photoshop CS6, you have the ability to use a filter named tilt shift. But let's say I don't use CS6. What do? Most beginners will do the following. They'll make another copy of the image and they'll use a filter to blur it. They'll create a mask for it. And by using the gradient tool, they're going to make a gradient mask. And by doing that, we're actually making a blurred layer that's fading out from top to bottom. Now this method is bad. And it's bad because parts in the photo that are supposed to be slightly blurred are actually parts where you can see the original photo covered by a translucent, blurred one. And we don't want that. So we'll make another copy, and this will be our awesome blur, because it's awesome. And for this blur, we're going to use a filter named lens blur. And this filter brings up the ability to use a layer mask for the depth map. So let's close it out for a moment. And we'll create a gradient mask just like we did before for the awesome blur. And a cool trick is that by holding down Alt on the keyboard and clicking the layer's mask, you can actually see the mask itself. And by doing that again, you are going out of this view. So we'll hide the original layer below just to see that the mask works. But the problem is that we want the mask to be there, but we don't want it to affect our layer. So this time, by holding down Shift on the keyboard and clicking the layer's mask, we're hiding it. But remember, the mask is still there. So before using the lens blur again, we'll scale down our document, because lens blur is a really heavy filter. Let's bring up lens blur once again. And you can see something really interesting. By clicking on different parts of the view, I'm actually changing where I want the focal distance to be. And you can see that the focal distance slider on the right is changing as well. So the trick here is that the lower values of the focal distance are actually the darker parts of the mask. So if we have a gradient that is darker on the bottom and brighter on top, the highest value of the focal distance will be the higher part of the mask. So using a gradient is cool. But let's say we want to take it to the next level. Let's make another copy of the original image and we'll name it Awesome Blur 2 because it's awesome. And we'll create a new layer and we'll call it Depth Map. And using the same principles, we'll take the brush tool and we'll brush in a black color everything that's close to the lens. And we'll do the opposite with white. And for everything in between, we're gonna use different shades of gray. Sometimes I like to use 50. So just to make sure that we don't have any transparent holes in our layer, we'll duplicate it a few times. We'll select all of the copies we made using Shift and Ctrl E to merge them all into one layer. So how do we assign this layer as a mask? You need to go to the Channels tab. And if it's not there, you need to go to Window and Channels. And then by holding down Ctrl and clicking the RGB channel, you are selecting all the bright parts of the document. And that's great because now we can go to our image and simply assign it a new mask. So we'll click the icon between the layer's preview and its mask just to unlink them for a second. And by choosing the mask, we'll apply any type of blur just to make it more unified. We'll click the same place to relink our mask to the layer. We'll shift click the mask to hide it. Then we'll click our layer's preview just to make sure we're working with the layer itself. So we can now bring up lens blur again, and the first thing you will notice is that the blur looks much more realistic. And we can now play with different focal distance values just to get a sense of how good this method works. But we still want the cabs to be our main part of the image. So we'll use a lower focal distance value and we'll hit enter. And I just want to show you how good it looks in comparison to the blur we made in the beginning of the tutorial. Much more realistic. If you found the last 4 minutes and 44 seconds useful, please subscribe and like this video. A lot more to come, and as always, thanks for checking out Creavite tutorials. Bye. Depth map.